So, I stopped talking to my dad and grandma back in 2018. Now, the reasons as to why I stopped talking to them in 2018, there's a lot of reasons, and trust me, I'm gonna get into them. Um, but godly, these people, and it sucks. It's not that I wanted them to be obviously bad people. Like no one wants to say like, oh hey, I want to talk poorly about my fucking dad or my grandma. But the issue is that when they're just this shitty, I don't really give a fuck. And here's the problem: it's not that I didn't want to have a relationship with my dad. I actually tried. I tried for a while, but sometimes it gets to a point where you just can't fucking deal with it anymore. So what do I mean? I am not kidding when I say this shit starts all the way back from even when I was literally just born. So here's the thing about my dad that is very shady from the start. So my dad ended up living in lower state Florida, and he has always been the kind of person that never stays in one area for too long. He goes from place to place, whether it's him living in his own car or him going and living with some friends and roommating for a bit. It's never really certain that he'll ever have his own place. It's very rare to see him have his own place. And it's usually because he's trying to save money wherever he can. And he doesn't see the reason for it. Even as far as back then, my dad showed his true colors, and even I didn't know it. My dad, by the time that he met my mom, because my mom had come from a very stressful situation in Puerto Rico where, needless to say, her family relationships over there, they weren't, always the nicest or whatever, which is fine, whatever. But when she came over here, she really didn't have anyone. Really, all she had was really one relative, and that relative happened to be a best friend of my dad. Now, this is where the story just obviously starts going, downhill. My dad was always a nasty son of a bitch. My dad was always a nasty scumbag because he always liked women that were younger. And it took me a while to realize that that's what he did because I had to look back at other women that he had dated previously, and a lot of them always skewed to a younger demographic. I'm not saying he was dating nothing like fucking 12 or anything, but he was going for like, 16 or 17-year-olds, and it happened multiple times. And one of them was my mom. He ended up grooming my mom, and they ended up getting into a relationship, and that's what started this whole downhill thing. Now, my dad, I'm going to give you an idea of his personality and my grandma's, just so you can understand where this story is going. So, my dad is a self proclaimed Christian, a man of God. And the way that he is a man of God is that he will use the Bible, he will weaponize the Bible to win any argument. You're arguing with him? Oh, the Bible says don't argue against your parents. In the case of my sister, made a promise when you were like 12, or not even 12, it was like 8. You made a promise when you were 8 that you would never date a guy until you were like 30. And then when you're 14 and obviously forgot about said thing, your dad takes it so personally and starts bringing up the Bible. Or in the case of, oh, hey, you have depression. Well, why are you depressed? You don't really have a reason to be depressed. You don't really have a reason to be depressed. Because you have a roof over your head, you have people that love you and care about you. I mean, if you really think about it, like, you shouldn't really be complaining because there's kids in Africa who don't have any of that stuff. So my dad is, one, insensitive, two, doesn't realize the shit that he says, three, uses, religious stuff to win every argument, which is definitely not what God said to do. And then he will inflate his own ego, saying that like he's so great, he's so amazing because he knows so much, he reads so much. Just because you read so much doesn't mean you practice it. You're a piece of shit regardless, so whatever. Um, and I'm gonna get into that. So my dad's always been like that. And then in terms of my grandma has always been an unfiltered mess. A 100% unfiltered mess. This motherfucker will go out and just say the first things that pop into her head. Doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter who gets hurt, doesn't matter what gets said. You don't even know what'll happen. It'll just be random. Her intrusive thoughts become external thoughts. For instance, if we went to like McDonald's back in the day, if I put in an order for anything, she would give them a whole lecture about why the meal wasn't for her. It was actually for me, and it's because I have eating problems and blah blah. And she's done all she can to try to fix me, and I have issues and blah blah. While I'm right there, so they're that kind of crowd. Just to give you an idea for personality, so that doesn't sound too bad on its own. But after I'm born, right, and I'm a baby, my mom wanted to leave because my dad has always been more or less a deadbeat. That's the best way I could put it. He's always been a deadbeat. My dad was in his 30s when he met my mom when she was only about 16. So he's also a pedophile, so that's cool. Um, so he ended up, um, fuck, I just lost track of saying that. Hold up. I'm getting worked up. Hold up. So my mom wanted to leave him because at this point my dad couldn't get his shit straight. He wanted to constantly live with his mom, and that's something that he's always done even up until this day. He always either lives with his mom or roommates with someone or stays in his car. It does not mean that he can't afford it. He just chooses not to half the time. And so what ends up happening is, my mom's thinking about leaving and whatnot. And we're going to put a pin in that story until later, okay? We're going to put a pin in that story till later. But eventually, my youngest sister, Rachel, is born. Now, the reason why I'm saying youngest is because my dad actually has 4 kids. One of which was with a different mother, the second which was with another different mother, and then the last 2 were with the same mother. So 3 baby mamas, 4 kids. And so what ended up happening was after my sister was born, we, had, a nice, up living. Like it felt like for me and my sister, it's not like we had any issues. The only issues we ever had was that our dad was a bit too rough with us. For instance, like he was real big into like MMA. And so he would perform MMA moves on us when we were like 5 or 4, which is, if you're doing it playfully is fine, but like sometimes he would actually do it to the point where we would be hurting, and sometimes we cried. So sometimes he would just take it too far. Well, eventually, what ends up happening is after my sister is born, my dad and mom finally are able to get us into a townhouse. Um, and this townhouse was a little 2-story apartment or whatever. And during all of this time, I'm still suffering from eating issues. This entire time, from when I was born to now, which would be a span of 8 years, I have been suffering from eating issues from when I was basically born to now. Not exactly. Well, I was from the year 1 when I hit 1 year old to 8. Now, this is important to bring up for this part because this brings in my grandma into the situation. So at this time, what ended up happening was when I was, okay, so to backtrack, this is now to get my grandma caught up to the dad story. So me and my dad and mom and Rachel were all at a townhouse. This is now about my grandma. So my grandma, back when I was like 1 or 2, would realize, hey, he's not eating, he's not doing all that great, he's not, eating his shit. And so what she would do is try to peer pressure me or force me into eating whatever was there. And my mom would witness this. She would try to get her to stop, but my grandma was very keen on trying to force me to eat because I didn't want to eat. And that was a really weird thing for a lot of my family because I was eating watermelon all the time, but then after hitting 1 year old, I just wasn't able to do it. So they were like, oh, that's a little weird, but maybe it's just something that it's because he's growing up. Well, my grandma wasn't taking that for an answer, and so she would try to force me to eat. This eventually got to the point where I just started having issues eating most things. And what would happen whenever I would eat those things for years, even up until now, would be that I would get nauseous just smelling them. And sometimes if I would eat any foods, whether it was pizza or bacon or pancakes or whatever, I would throw up. Didn't mean I didn't want to eat it. Like, trust me, I would love to know what the fuck everyone's talking about when it comes to bacon, but, So that whole thing would lead to me not eating. And I, up until this point, up until 2008, was just not eating. This is where my grandma comes into play with the 2008 situation. So, my grandma, this is, so she ended up taking me to McDonald's. And back in the day, I was unable to eat anything except for the fries. They kept trying to get me to eat burgers, and I just couldn't eat the burgers. So my grandma sneakingly took me to go to McDonald's, and she forced me to eat chicken nuggets, which, this time I didn't throw up. And she took that as an absolute win. She was like, oh my God, you can eat stuff. All right, cool. And this led to many, many years afterwards where she would try to force food down my throat, where she would scratch against my throat, like literally choking me, trying to force feed me food. She did it multiple times, and my dad was a witness to all of it. My dad never really did anything about it. And my grandma would try to force feed me food all the time. And this eventually got back to my dad. My dad, around 2008, would also start to force feed me food. He ended up force feeding me to eat pizza a lot. And he would just kind of stick it down my throat, and he would be surprised when I would be throwing up. And so this led to a lot of food that I just couldn't really eat, and they just didn't care. So they would force me to eat. There would be times where my dad, because of what my grandma was doing, would sit me down at a table and try to force feed me, different fruits or stuff. Like he would try to force feed me watermelon for a while. And he always did his best to make sure that no one was there for it. He always did it when it was just me and him in the kitchen. He would always say, like, hey, come over here or whatever. And then he would just try to force feed me food. And I would throw up a lot. And he would keep yelling, and he would get upset at me for throwing up food. That shit sucked. So, get that caught up. So, now in 2008, my mom and dad, through their own, means, basically had to separate. They finally had to separate, and me and my sister at the time just didn't understand it. We didn't understand the concept of divorce. We didn't understand the concept of separating the family. We just didn't understand it. And we didn't understand why it was happening. And so my dad, instead of taking any accountability for anything, because, he groomed a 16-year-old girl, he's been force feeding his son food for God knows how long. He's been way too rough physically with his son, his daughter, and his wife. He never takes accountability for anything, because if he even seems like he's going to do it for a sec, he uses the Bible to backtrack out of it. And he's never wrong, because he uses the Bible to justify every single one of his bad actions. And somehow, after all of that, which, keep in mind, this is me talking about it as an adult. As a kid, I didn't know, some of that stuff. And so, instead of him taking accountability or even just staying neutral in the whole situation, he would weaponize me and my sister mentally. He would mentally coerce us into attacking our relatives, verbally and emotionally and mentally. He would literally poke and prod the bear, getting us to just feel rage and emotion and rageful. He wanted us to feel hateful all the fucking time. Like, this man would never stop talking about the fucking past in a negative connotation. Like, he would just keep repeating the same stories. I can't tell you how many times I've heard the same story about how my mom's a bitch, my mom's a whore, my mom's this, my mom's that, my mom's good for nothing, oh, she's manipulating you guys. Like, he would just keep talking over and over. I can't tell you how many times I've heard the same fucking nonsense over the years. And he would weaponize us against our mother, our own fucking mother, who we were living with, because after the divorce, my mom, gained custody. And I wonder why. Because an emotionally and mentally unstable man, weaponizing his children against their mother. Wow, I could imagine how that's, not a good guy. And what's funny is eventually when we would stop talking to him, he would get mad that our mother wasn't pushing us to talk to him more. We stopped talking to you for our own reasons, but I'll get to that. So he, was doing all of that. He was weaponizing us against them, and we would go off on my mom, my older sister, um, and my grandma on my mom's side, and we would basically be his weapons. He couldn't communicate with them, but we basically would through him. Like, he would communicate through us to them, essentially. He was weaponizing us for that. And it was ridiculous because there was never an instance where, when you look back on it, there was never an instance where we gained the whole truth. It was just what he wanted us to hear. So we would just be over here hearing this nonsense of how your family's evil, your family's scumbags, your family's this and that. And it's like, dude, like, after we had to leave his townhouse, right? After we had to leave the townhouse because of the divorce, we went to my grandma's house on my mom's side of the family. And we were essentially homeless. Me and my sister and my mom were essentially homeless. And it is probably one of the lowest points in our life because we had to, all three of us, share one bedroom at my grandma's house because my grandma only had a 2-bedroom house, and that's the only place we could go to because he kicked us out. He kicked us out of the house. And we couldn't find out anything. We couldn't find a place. He kicked us all out. And so what ended up happening was my dad got very into the habit of drinking wine. He claimed it was going to help him with sleeping, and he said that it's better than any other kind of liquor because if you read the Bible, it actually mentions wine quite a few times. So really speaking, I could drink wine, I'm pretty sure. The Bible also says don't get, hammered like a fucking jackass, but, we'll get to this. So my dad ends up getting, fucking ludicrously hammered. And this would lead to instances where, at this time, me and my sister finally had phones. This is the first time we ever had phones, was in 2008. And he would message us. And he would message us these drunk texts where he's talking about how he misses us. He loves us. He cherishes us. And that it's your mother's fucking fault. It's your mother's damn fault. Your mother ruined the family. Your mother's turning us against each other. And I would get these fucking messages, bro, about how my mom is like the scum of the earth and shit. And it was so fucking annoying. And you're hearing this as a fucking 8-year-old kid. You don't understand what's going on. You just know that, hey, the family's breaking up. You don't understand why the family's breaking up. So when your dad is supposedly giving you the answers, you're gonna trust it. Here's the issue, though. Here's the fucking issue. My mom, during all of this, decided to pull the card that I thought my dad was gonna pull, which was, hey, I'm playing a neutral stance when it comes to the divorce. Right? Even though my dad was at fault for why the divorce happened, because, he's him, my mom decides to play the neutral approach. While this man is lambasting her, talking absolute shit, making sure that we know she is this scum of the earth, while she is the only one providing a roof over our head because he kicked us out, while all that's going on, we're believing it because my mom's not saying anything. My mom's not saying anything. She's not saying her side. So at the time, even though we knew some shady shit about our dad, the reason as to why the divorce finalized, we just was believing it's because of her. And so we were weaponized against our mother. We would go off on her and whatever. And it was because of all his stupid drunk texting. This leads into one of the genuine scariest nights of my life. And this is no hyperbole or anything, but my dad legitimately traumatized me because of this. So what ended up happening was my dad, I don't know if he actually was drunk this night. I really don't know. Because the shit that happened, I don't know. I don't know if he was drunk or not. I really don't know. He acted like it, but as a kid, you can always think that, people are drunk when they're not. But he, so he ended up drunk texting and drunk calling. And he drunk texted my mom and said that basically he was going to off himself. He was going to kill himself. And so he more or less said he was going to kill himself unless like the three of us were there. And so we went over there. And for context, I was at the time 8 years old, and my sister, my youngest sister, was like 5 or 6. And we got over there, and my dad was just on the couch, and he was just crying downstairs. And he had this like bottle of wine, and like this little like he had like the actual bottle of wine in his hand. And we all came in, and the house was so dark because this was at night. This wasn't during the day. This was at night. And he looked so disheveled. He looked so messy. And he ended up throwing up on himself. And so he had, like, my mom had basically, been under the assumption that, he was drunk, obviously. And so she had suggested for him to get a shower at least. And he was acting so much like a toddler. It felt like it almost like a show in a way, but it was so weird. And me and my sister ended up having to like wash him because he claimed he couldn't do it himself. So there we are with our supposedly wasted father washing his entire body and washing him clear of vomit. And what ends up happening is after this, I went into my bedroom, and the bedroom that we had at the townhouse, because basically we were upstairs. The bathroom is upstairs, the master bedroom is upstairs, and the children's bedroom was upstairs. The only thing downstairs is the kitchen and the living room. And so I didn't know how to feel about seeing my dad in that state. I had never seen my dad in that state. And it was so weird seeing him crying about this all the time. And now I see him like crying and then like hitting himself and scratching himself and like slapping his face, and he's getting like more and more aggressive. And it was honestly scary because at that point I didn't know if he was going to hurt us. And apparently, I would later find out my mom was kind of under the same thing. She didn't know if he was going to hurt us. And I was scared. I was like genuinely scared of him, thinking that, shit was going to get worse. And so what ended up happening was I just couldn't take it, because after we washed him, and we even had to clothe him, and we even helped him brush his teeth. Like after that, I don't know, something in me just I didn't feel comfortable, and I went to the bedroom. And when I went to the bedroom, what ended up happening was my sister came too, and we had a bunk bed. And so my sister went on the top bunk and I went on the bottom, and I just kind of went there, and I was holding my pillow because I have a pillow from when I was born, and that's always been like my security thing. So I'm holding my pillow, and I just started crying because I didn't know how to process what I was seeing. And my sister ended up passing out. And so I'm in my bed, I'm crying, and I hear my dad like doing these wails of crying and shit that was just so intense. And what ended up happening, and I never told my mom this, but my mom tried to put my dad to bed so that he could sleep off his drunkenness, And me still being awake, holding my fucking security pillow. I was hearing my dad try to rape my mom. I heard it in the other room, but I didn't know how to process it as a kid. I just didn't, because all I could hear were the many shouts of no and the screams of no, and I just didn't understand what was going on at the time. I didn't understand what he was trying to do. And I had the door closed to let Rachel sleep. So my mom ends up running down the stairs. And I hear it. I hear the foot pedals. I hear the feet going down the stairs really fast and really hard. And obviously that makes me think, like, are we leaving? And so I open the door. And when I open the door, I just see my dad chasing after my mom. And it's this look in his eyes that I have never seen before or since. But this look in his eye of pure just lock. He was locked in. He didn't even see me open the door. He was just locked in, and he chased her down. And he tried to chase her down. Since we were on the second floor, from where my view was of the room, I could actually look out through the glass panels that we had, and I could actually see the front door. And I saw my mom, running for her fucking life, and I see my dad running at her with a knife. At this point, I was genuinely scared. I didn't know if I was going to see my mom die. I didn't know if I was going to see her get stabbed, and I didn't know what to do. And I was sat there with so much fear, I just froze. And I see her get to the car, and it felt like I could breathe until I saw him get to the car. And he ended up getting to the car, and I saw him banging on the window, banging on the door, everything. And I was so scared. I couldn't even scream. I couldn't say anything. I was just so frozen. It felt almost like a video game. It felt unreal. But my mom was able to call her mom, and that seemed to get him to back off. And he started walking back to the house, and he started cussing and stuff, and that's where I learned a lot of cuss words. Like, I never knew what fuck was until that day. I never knew what shit was until that day. But he cussed her. He cussed her out a lot. And so he goes inside, and as he's going inside, he's on the first floor. I get super scared because the last I saw him with was a knife. So I thought he was coming for us. I honestly thought he was coming for us. And so I run back into the bed, and I hold my security pillow, and I am just like breathing as hard as I can. Like, I'm hyperventilating basically at this point. I am freaking out thinking I'm going to die. And it's the first time I've ever felt that fear. And it was because of my dad. And he came upstairs and he opened the door. Now, my back was turned towards the door, so I didn't know what was going to happen. I really didn't. And it scared me. And so I was just so frozen with fear. I didn't know if he was going to stab me from the back or whatever, but he comes up and he picks me up and he takes me to the car and he drops me in. The entire time I'm like frozen with fear. I'm pretending like I'm asleep. And he does the same for my sister. He puts us in. And he says a few more things to my mom, but my mom doesn't hear anymore. She's just crying and whatever. And we drive off. And that shit was wild. That shit was intense. As a kid, the way I tried to rationalize it was he had to be drunk. That's not how my dad acts. My dad would never do half the shit that he was doing. It had to be him drunk. And that's how I tried to rationalize it for a long time. But when something like that happens to you, You, honest to God, replay it in your head over and over again. And the moment that he was aggressive towards my mom, it was a little too coincidental because he went from being, like a fucking toddler, wasted, to the point where his children needed to assist him with basically showering himself, bathing himself, and clothing himself and brushing his teeth. He needed all that assistance. But then all of a sudden, after he lays down for literally about 10 seconds, he attempts rape. He chases her down like a marathon runner in a straight line, no disorientation or whatever, grabs a fucking knife and is able to process all this and able to talk coherently now. I don't know. I don't know. That doesn't make sense to me. That does not make sense to me. But as a kid, that's how I tried to rationalize it, because my dad never acted that way in front of me anyways, for a good while. So that was the way I tried to rationalize it, was he had to be drunk. He had to be. It was the alcohol. Looking back on it, I really don't believe that he was wasted. I believe that this was supposed to be some form of entrapment where he would get his family back. And I'm just really thankful that my mom was able to call her mom, and that was enough to scare him to let us go. But so after this scare, I really didn't know how to think of my dad. I really didn't, because my dad was this. But I tried to rationalize it forever that it was just the alcohol. So I tried to be nice, and I would let it go. And this would lead to him having instances of him trying to manipulate us against my mom, against my mom's side of the family. And this got really bad when in 2009, 2010, somewhere around there, my mom would meet my first stepfather, Patrick. Now, when this happened, I am not exaggerating when I say it felt, for a 9-year-old kid, like the world exploded. Because on one hand, I had my mom dating a new man whom, at the time, at the start, was definitely treating her better than my dad ever did, but I didn't understand that completely. And then on my dad's side, ooh, that's where shit got real spicy. So my dad decided that he was 100% the husband of my mother till death do they part. Literally, till death do they part. And if she were to be with anyone else, that would be sacrilegious. And that's because it's the Bible. And so he weaponized us against my first stepfather from the very beginning. He weaponized us even before my stepfather, at the time, his name was Patrick, he started doing anything inherently bad or questionable. Even before he started doing anything like that, my dad was trying to weaponize us against him. Not because my dad knew anything about him. He didn't. He really didn't. But my dad was like, that's a man in my place. You guys shouldn't be adhering to those guidelines. Definitely talk shit. So he weaponized this against Patrick. And this would lead to a back and forth spat where it was Patrick versus my dad for years, and literally the kids, me and my sister, were in the middle of it. We were the communicators for both sides, and we were so exhausted, and my dad would just constantly be like, oh, he's shit because of this, he's shit because of this. The man really didn't know him. Now, I'm not saying Patrick was an innocent man. No, he's a piece of shit on his own, but my dad didn't really know him. Now, true, my dad did stalk him, because my dad, is crazy like that. He stalked him and my mom, but, when Patrick, pulls up and says, like, hey, yo, you need to back up, I'll shoot you, you probably back off after that. But my dad, he basically, hold up, pause the story. So my dad, what ends up happening is, he weaponizes us against Patrick, we're going off on him, and this goes back and forth for years. My grandma at this point, my dad's mom, she at this point is spreading the gossip of how horrible my mother is to literally everyone that she can. This means her clients, because my grandma is in charge of a salon called Dahlia Salon in, Miami. So she would talk nonsense and bullshit and shit about my mom nonstop. She would do it to my dad, who then in turn would talk shit about it to every single one of his friends and his family, that being us. So we always had to hear about how shitty my mom was and whatever. When this man could never pay a lick of child support. This man, okay, so there were times before we were with Patrick, there were times where we didn't know if we were going to eat. There were times if we didn't know if we would have a roof. There were times where we didn't even have like clothes to go to school, really, because there were uniforms. And my dad would always find some way to weasel out of paying child support. This man would go and he would have a high paying job like carpet cleaning, and then he would just quit and go and work for pizza like a month or two before he was supposed to go to court so he could get a lighter payment for fucking child support. And it wasn't like he was spending other money on us. He really wasn't. His idea of spending money on us wasn't child support, which was literally the only thing that was keeping us afloat at some points. No, 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 no. It was, oh, hey, let me take you to Dollar Tree and get you like a $1, spongy Venom toy. Let me tell you, that spongy Venom toy was like my favorite toy for a year because literally some of the only toys I had. This man was giving me some of the cheapest shit. The most expensive toy he ever got me up until that point was like a Spider-Man toy that was meant for like going into the tub. And he had like scuba gear and shit like that. It was like 20 bucks from Toys R Us. I still don't know where that fucking shit went. And you best believe I was treating that like the Holy Grail. I think he took it, honest to God. And so what ended up happening was, he ended up always turning down and doing his best to avoid paying child support. So we didn't have a lot of our basic necessities. And really, we weren't properly fed until Patrick came along. When Patrick came along, he ended up realizing, like, hey, I'm dating this woman who has kids. I also want higher aspirations. He decided to go into the military, which led to us moving. And that also blew up my dad. That led to a whole war, but we still moved. And because of Patrick and because of Patrick's connections with the military, we actually were fed. We actually were in a home that didn't feel toxic for once. We were finally away from people constantly bastardizing our mother, because there was never an instance where my dad was never doing that. And it was so tiring because I never wanted to fucking hear it. But for the first time, we were actually fed like properly, because my dad definitely never wanted to feed us. He never wanted to fucking get us shit. The only thing he would ever do was get us candy occasionally from dollar store and get us toys occasionally from dollar store. Like, we never really got anything. And it was a blessing if we got $50 for Christmas. Let me tell you, that was a blessing. Half the time he said he didn't even celebrate Christmas and he wasn't going to give us shit. But, I digress. So what ended up happening was we were fed, we were treated well, whatever, and everything was going well with Patrick for realistically the first year and a half that he was around. He was around from, I want to say, and this is me coming from recollection, from the end of 2008, early 2009 to the end of 2012, and start of 2013, somewhere around there. I might be mistaken, but he was there for about 4 years. The first 2 years, honest to God, he was chill. He was fine, but my dad still weaponized this against him. He still was like, that is a man in my place. You should treat him as such. Treat him poorly. And we did. And that led to some problems that, honest to God, looking back, I don't know if 100% of the problems that came up with Patrick were just because he went into the military, or it was because, a lot of people were pushing him that way, because me and my sister were definitely treating him like shit. I don't know. I really don't know. But the point is that eventually Patrick started treating us like shit too. And this would lead to my dad thinking that he had a lot more ammunition. And because of this ammunition, he would try to twist the narrative and be like, oh, hey, well, your mother is a shitty woman because, if you think about it, like, why is she with someone that you guys don't even like? Not realizing that, it's because of him we couldn't move out. It's because of my dad we couldn't move out, because my mom, just at the time, was not making enough to support us. Patrick was. Patrick was the only reason we had food on the table and a roof over our head. That I can give him credit for. But my dad, not so much. My dad was very adamant that he did not want to pay child support. He even would brag about sister, I'll be damned if I pay child support. I'll be damned if she sees a penny out of me, you know? And like he would ask for all these special like fucking treatments and shit for him in order for him to even pay a lick of it. Like for instance, he wanted her to like basically force us to talk to him whenever he wanted type shit, and like if we didn't talk to him or we were grounded or whatever, he would stop paying for our phone bills, which he did because we got grounded at one point, and he said, "Oh, I'll pay for your phone bills," and he paid for it for 1 month. And because we got grounded, he took away our funding for our phones. He just took it away. He said, "Nope, I'm not paying for your phone anymore because you guys got grounded," and he never paid it again. Never. And we weren't grounded for long. We were grounded for like literally like 3 days. But because we got grounded, he found a way out. He was such a weasel. He would find his way to sneak his way out of ever paying anything for his kids and then try to boast that he's the good parent because, oh, I take you guys to theme parks. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the theme parks weren't appreciated. I'm saying going to the theme parks weren't fun. I'm not saying that. But I don't give a fuck. I really don't give a fuck if I'm going home and I'm starving. But the dumbass couldn't fucking understand that. He never could fucking understand that. He's like, oh, as long as they're having fun with their father, that means I'm the better parent. No, you're a fucking scumbag. You're just a fucking scumbag. I'm going home starving at points because you rather take me to the fucking theme park? Or your mother, instead of getting me fucking food or helping me out or whatever, she'd rather force feed me the food to the point where I throw up, and then she would rather bastardize me and be like, well, damn, you threw up. It's because you want some dumb shit. No, fuck you both. Fuck you both. The fuck you mean? And so, eventually, Patrick ends up, Patrick and my mom end up separating. And my dad takes this as an absolute win. He's like, oh, we finally got the trash out. We finally got him away. He's like, this is a win for us. A win for us. Like, everything had to be a win for us because it was a win for him, type shit. And so, what would end up happening starting in 2014 was my dad would take me and my sister down to Miami. Starting like 2013, 2014, he would start taking us down to Miami. And I'm not entirely sure who brought it up for us to go down with him for summers. I don't know. I don't know if it was a mom thing or him thing. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But we would go down for summers. And we started doing that, and each summer would be different. Sometimes we'd go down for about a month. Sometimes we went down for the whole summer. Sometimes we went down for a couple weeks. It just depended. But the first 2 summers, I remember them vividly because both of them, we had to leave home. We had to leave early. We had to go home early. And the reason why was because my grandma, when you're with her for too long, when you're with her for more than 72 hours, she becomes literally the biggest bitch you can think of. This motherfucker will say everything under the sun that comes to her mind, anything that she mumbles under her breath, anything. She'll just fucking, say it to her heart's content. She doesn't care. So she'll say everything unfiltered, and it doesn't matter. Well, what ended up happening was she would come up, and she would stuff us with like all types of food. Now, my sister didn't have too many eating problems like I did, but I had the most. Those couple of times we went down, 2013 and 2014, she would stuff us with food. Like, she would us food. And it got to the point where we would literally be running from her. And I had scratch marks because the first year, I believe, we went to a Publix. And when we went to the Publix, she had gotten some food. I believe it was a pizza because it was a Publix, like, shopping center. She got a pizza. And while in the car, it was just me and her, she, like, jumped in the back and started like trying to force feed me food. And obviously I threw up in the back of her car. And she got so mad, she slapped me. She got so mad that I threw up in her car that she slapped me. And so, I'm going, I just kind of stay quiet, and she tells me to clean it up. So I have to clean up the vomit off of myself and off the car. We get back to the house, and I tell my dad that she slapped me. I tell my dad what happened, that she force fed me and that she slapped me. And so my dad, he ends up saying like, all right, nope, not dealing with that. And one thing I will give him credit for, good on him, he ends up saying we're going to leave. And we left. We didn't come back. We didn't say, hey, we're going to give you a week or 2 or a month or whatever. It wasn't anything like that. it was more of like, we're done, we're gone. So we left, and the next year came, and a similar thing happened, but instead this happened in my grandma's house, because that's where we'd go to. Like I said, we would go to my grandma's house and we would spend the summer there. And she was really obsessed with really trying to get me to eat. And so she would like grab me by the hair, or she would grab me by the shirt, and she would try to like pull me over to the kitchen and be like, she would try to play it off like a joke, like, come on, come on, we're gonna get you to eat, we're gonna get you to eat, and like she would be rough about it or whatever. And when I would say like I'm not comfortable eating, I don't want to eat, she would still force me to eat, and she would still scratch me. I had scratch marks that would cause blood on my back, on my chest, on my arms, on my neck. Like it was everywhere. Now I'm not saying like, oh, these were like, but like, you're still getting scratches from your fucking grandma that shouldn't be happening. And so I had to run. I had to run, and I ran underneath her like king size mattress bed that had a bed frame that was elevated, and I hid underneath it, and she obviously couldn't reach me. And my dad came in, asked like, why is he under the bed? It led to an argument back and forth, and my dad, again, good on him, said, we're not staying here, we're leaving. So, we left. And what ends up happening is we get back to Jacksonville. And we get back to Jacksonville. We're all just chilling. We're all having a fine enough time, but like I'm mostly quiet. My dad ends up taking me back to my mom's, drops us off, and I just kind of was quiet. I didn't really say much. My dad was trying to say a lot, obviously, but I was really just kind of zoned out. And I didn't really want to see her, so I didn't go to see her for Christmas. I didn't go to see her for her birthday. But the following year, my dad was like, hey, look, it's been a year. You haven't really talked to her much. You should probably go and hang out with her. My dad was real big on trying to push us to always, talk with them or whatever. So, I tried for him or whatever, even though I really didn't want to. Um, and he's like, oh, come on. My dad would be like, oh, come on. You have to think about it. She does buy you a lot of toys. She does buy you a lot of gifts. And it's like, I really don't care. Like, she's literally scary. And also, she tells everyone all of my shit all the time, all of my secrets or gossip or anything. She'll tell that to a fucking Publix worker. Like we had a running joke for a while that like, oh hey, did you go to the grocery store and did she tell you, the grocery store clerk your whole life story? Like that was a running joke because that's what would fucking happen, and it was getting annoying, and so they never would learn from their mistakes or whatever. This led into 2015. I would go over there, and the summer was fine. The summer was okay. Everything was chill. There was no issues, no huss, no fuss. Well, my mom ends up um, getting into another relationship. This would lead my dad to go on a warpath and go crazy or whatever. He was losing his fucking marbles. Well, that relationship is, still going to this day. So I don't know about my dad, but it lasted longer than your marriage, so I don't know. But what ended up happening was that when my mom got into this new relationship, you could see that my dad was like bitter all over again, like as if like he just lost his favorite toy. Now, here's the thing. My dad's also a huge fucking liar and hypocrite because, he's out here saying like, oh, there shouldn't be anyone else for your mother but me. And he's always talking shit about my mom. He's always talking shit about past women that he's been with. Yet, this man was dating a woman immediately after my mom. And this woman also had 2 kids. And she also moved in really soon after they got together. And he expects me to believe they're not having premarital sex. I'm sorry, you're a fucking idiot and you're stupid if you think I believe that. And then he dated like a few other chicks that, have been in and out through the years. Obviously, for some reason, he killed a woman. But either way, so what ends up happening is in 2015, everything goes fine, dandy or whatever. But, with this new relationship, my dad, obviously has his heat-seeking missiles on. So he starts doing this whole, manipulative shit again where he's constantly trying to persuade me and my sister to believe that, this new man is not good enough. This new man is not the right fit. And it just kind of was getting old. It was kind of getting, oh my God. it was just kind of getting old at this point. What the fuck? What just happened? Okay, there we go. Okay, so they, um, sorry. So basically, as I was saying, I lost my train of thought. Let me get the weed. That'll help my train of thought. Okay, yep, that did it. All right, so basically what ended up happening was he would start talking shit about my mom's new man. He was doing that constantly, and this eventually led to me like having some times where I didn't want to hang out with my dad. And it even got to the point where my dad would also try to be very judgmental about my relationships. Like, for instance, I was dating this girl named Mary from high school, and my dad wanted to like critique every little thing about her. And he's like, "Are you sure you want to date someone that looks like that? I mean, come on, you could do better. Look at her like this and this." Like, he was very meticulous about judging her as if it was for himself, which was gross. And also, when you think about it, at the time that I was dating my girlfriend was 16 and I was 16, so it's his favorite age to choose from apparently. So what ends up happening is stuff like that keeps going on. So it's little shit like that from 2015 to 2017. There's little shit going on there. And keep in mind, during 2015 to 2017, my father had also moved up to Jacksonville to be here and be there with me and my sister. Well, what ended up happening was during this time, like he would live there, we would see him all the time, but obviously things would come up to the point where we didn't want to talk to him for a while, and he just wouldn't understand. Sometimes I just wanted to cut him off, and the only reasons as to why we ever talked to him again, and whether he knows this or not, I don't know. Lord knows I don't give a fuck. But the thing when it came to us talking to him again, every single time we ever talked to him again, it was not because we wanted to. Trust me, we did not want to. At this point, we got tired of it. I don't want to have a conversation with someone who is always right. I don't want to have a conversation with someone who's always viewing themselves as a saint. I don't want to have a conversation with someone who literally at some points feels like they believe they're the next coming to Jesus Christ. Like I don't want to hear that shit. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to deal with it. It's ridiculous. It's annoying. It's at points condescending. He's manipulative. He's controlling. Like the fucking sister thing. He would have my fucking sister hold on to a promise from when she's 8 because, oh hey, you told me you would never date till you're 30. She started dating someone when she was 16. Keep in mind, I was dating someone also while I was 16, and my dad gave me no real issues other than, are you sure you're choosing the right one? You could do better. He was doing that, but um, with my sister, he pulled a different approach. He said, "How dare you? How could you? How could you ever do this to us?" The fuck do you mean us? Like, I have to do a double take when I hear that. What the fuck do you mean us? But he's like, how could you do this to us? And she's like, what do you mean? And he's like, you made this promise when you were 8. You promised that you wouldn't date anyone until you were 30. Motherfucker, are you stupid? I know the answer. But, like, at this point, I need you to speak it. Because, like, damn, motherfucker, you dumb. You stupid. Like, golly, I would love to see him hold his fucking promises from when he was 8. Oh, he's stupid. But, hey, that's him. So what ends up happening is, golly. And so what ends up happening is, he gives her hell. And my sister at the time was performing arts. She is a very talented singer. My sister is genuinely, like, one of the best singers I have ever heard personally in my life, which is insane because I sing like, I sing like that, so I don't know. It's clearly only one of us got the singing gene. But she sings beautifully. Like, her voice is angelic. She would do performances, right? Sorry, I saw an ant. She would do performances at her school, and my dad opted to not show up because her boyfriend would be performing with her. And he had already bought a ticket, had already committed to saying he was going to show up, even said he would bring her flowers. And he decided not to show up because her boyfriend was going to be there. What a fucking coward. What a fucking piece of shit. Father of the year, my ass. And what's insane also is that the same man that he was saying, he's no good for your mother, that same man, the one that my mom's still with to this day, guess what? He showed up to the fucking, performance with flowers, unlike my dad. So I don't know. You're really making yourself look great there, Tony. You're making yourself look really fucking great. So after that, my sister starts wanting to distance herself from my dad because he is genuinely too fucking controlling. He is at a point where he's controlling her similarly to how he was controlling my mother. It was down to how she dressed. It was down to if she could have a boyfriend or not. It was down to all of this shit. He was controlling a lot about her, and then he was also like treating her like shit. Like she was like, "Oh, I'm depressed," and he's like, "Damn, you're depressed? I'm gonna be honest. Why the hell are you depressed? I mean, if you think about it, you got it better than the kids in Africa, so why the fuck are you complaining?" That's basically how he treated it, and it's like, and then you wonder why no one ever wants to vent to you because you're emotionally unavailable. Like I don't. It's ridiculous. It's so fucking tiring. It's exhausting. So all of that goes on, and trust me, just for that alone, I wanted to beat his ass. But whatever. So I start to distance myself from him in 2017. I started to distance myself from him in 2017, and I didn't talk to him for about a year because I got tired of how he was being judgmental about my girlfriend due to her appearance, due to just her. And I got also tired of how he was talking about my mom. And I also got tired of how he was treating my younger sister. I just got fucking fed up with it. And I said, you know what? I'm not fucking with this. So I stopped talking to him in 2017. That didn't mean that he wasn't trying to contact me because, during this time, my sister would still hang out with him from time to time. So he would come to the house, but I just wouldn't ever come out to say hi. And that went on for some time. And eventually, the only reason as to why I ended up talking to him again was because my mom kind of pressured me to. She kind of had been in conversation with him in text about hey, you should probably talk to your kids again or whatever. Like, no, like your kids should probably talk to you again. And he's like, yeah, I agree, blah, blah, and whatever. Figure that shit out. So they kind of coerced us into talking again. And I said, okay, I'll just try and manage. And he would start taking us to flea markets to kind of build some father-son quality time. And during these times, it was very rare for me not to hear a story about how the family got screwed over because of my mom, or how things would have been better if my mom didn't do this, or he didn't do this, or whatever. Like, I just kept hearing this over and over again. I'm like, dude, it's been 10 years. Like, shut the fuck up already. I don't care. I've moved on. You should move on. But whatever. And it was getting exhausting. However, another thing also started happening in 2017. And this was my childhood dog, Princess. She was getting sick. And she was very sick. She was unable to eat. She was unable to sleep. She was unable to do most day-to-day functions. It got to a point where it was like we could hear her whimpering at night. Now, there was a procedure. If I'm being honest, off the top of my head, this was back in 2017. I know I should remember, but I honest to God don't remember what she had. I know she had cancer. I just don't know what type. But they did say, hey, there's a chance to save her. But it's this operation. It's this cost. And at this point, my mom, me, and my sister were all living on our own. My mom had finally, been able to afford us to live on our own, so we were living on our own. And so we didn't have someone like a Patrick or like my dad to help us. And me and my family have always been big on never asking others for money. We'll offer help, we'll offer aid, but we've never really been big on like asking people for help. But because this was Princess and we had her since I was like 4, and at this time I was 17, 13 years, yeah, maybe it didn't seem viable, maybe it didn't make sense, but that was our girl. We were willing to try anything. And so we ended up asking my dad for money and my grandma for money. My grandma on my dad's side. The reason why we asked them both was because earlier in 2017, I had gone to my dad's storage unit to help him move around some stuff and help him clean out the storage unit a bit. While helping him with the storage unit, I never had let him know, but I had found a ton of money. Now, I don't know how much money it was, but it was a good amount. Like I'm talking like it looked like it was over 10. It looked like it was over 10K. Like it was a lot of money. And I was like puzzled. Why does someone that has this much money have it in their storage unit? Why not in the bank? But then when you think back to it, it's like that makes sense why you wouldn't have your money in your fucking bank. You'd have it in your storage unit because, you don't want to pay child support because you're a fucking scumbag. You'd rather let your kids starve than you spend any money on them. But hey, it's okay if you go and take them to Dollar Tree every now and then. That totally $3 that you spent at Dollar Tree on, a couple candies and a toy definitely makes up for the $50 in food that we're starving from. Father of the Year. So, I knew that he had money because I had seen the storage unit. And in terms of my grandma, her name is Batakwai, or we call her Batakwai. Batakwai, she had, at the time, always had good money because she had her salon. And so even though we knew it was a tall order and it was a tall ask, we still asked, hey, do you have any money that you'd be willing to help us with when it comes to this because we can't afford to save Princess? Now, we honestly thought, because I was asking, my mom wasn't, I was asking. I thought there was a chance because my dad had lived with Princess for a while. But my dad made a good point. He made a good point, fairly enough, that, hey, I haven't lived with that dog since 2008. This is 2017. Like, it's been some time. I've moved on. Which is ironic because you haven't moved on from your wife, your ex-wife, so I don't know. Seems a little picky with his moving on situations, but I digress. So what ends up happening is my dad turns it down for, a decent reason. Like, hey, I haven't lived with that dog in like 10 years. Like, no. And then my grandma basically said, no. And so, both have valid reasons. Both of them need to help. And we all accepted it. Now, there's a reason why I brought this up. Trust me, this is where it really hits the rails. So my dog was set to be put down in October and November of 2017. There's a video on my channel where maybe it's up, maybe it's not, I don't know. But I was crying my eyes out after it happened. Before it happened, we had tried everything we could. We tried medication, we tried giving her special food that the doctors had suggested. Nothing was helping because, it's cancer, and eventually she had to be put down. And I felt like my dad deserved to say goodbye. I felt like my dad deserved to say goodbye to the dog. Even though he didn't want to, help out, which is, again, fair, I still felt like he had spent enough time with the dog to care about the dog enough to say goodbye. And so I invited him on the day to come. Now, I honestly regret it because what he decided to do was, when we were in the parking lot, while my sister and mom were inside crying their eyes out about what we were having to do, and I was, blaming myself through grief, saying like, oh, somehow it's our fault, we didn't do enough, blah, blah. My dad, in his infinite wisdom, seeing his kid bawling his eyes out, holding his dog that he loves so much, seeing like, oh, hey, this could be the last day. My dad, in his infinite wisdom, decides that what he's going to do is he's going to pet the dog in front of me. He starts petting it. He gets on his knees. He's petting. He's like, hey, Princess, hey, I heard you're being put down. It sucks. I know you'll be in a better place. I love you always. It sucks that they're going to put you down because, I would have tried to help if they would have just asked, but, they just really wanted to put you down, and it is what it is. I got so fucking mad at him that I snatched the leash from him and I just walked inside and let that time that he was going to spend with her be spent with my mom and sister instead. And that day I lost a lot of respect for my dad. But my mom still was pushing, hey, he's your father. You should have a connection with your father. And don't get me wrong, like I understand why she's saying that, because it's not like she had the best relationship with her father, so she's trying to make amends. She's trying to say, hey, even though your father, because she knew my father was always talking shit about her, she's like, even though your father always talks shit about me, it is okay. Go and you know be there, be like with him, be his son. And so I even after that, I gave him another chance. I gave him another chance to straighten his fucking act up. And this is where 2018 comes into play. 2018 comes into play because what ends up happening is my dad obviously knew that I was graduating. And so he said that what he was going to do was he was going to drive my girlfriend, Mary, from Georgia down to us because she had moved by this point. And so, basically he's like, I will bring her down so you can spend your graduation with her. And so he brought her down. We spent my graduation together. It was a nice experience. It was chill. He drove her back up to Georgia when it was all said and done, like a day later. And, after the graduation, after that, my dad was saying that, hey, I'm, doing Uber. And at this time, I had known that he was doing Uber. He had rented a Prius hybrid, and he was saying, like, the gas mileage was so good because it's part electric, part gas, that you could drive the vehicle from, Jacksonville all the way to Miami on, like, $15 to $20 worth of gas. And I was like, that's cool. And so he said because of that, it was a really good opportunity for him to go to Miami again. And he said, you're an adult now. You're turning 18, you are 18. You're an adult. You should probably have one more fun summer. And I said, that's fair. And so I told him, could we be back, relatively soon, like within 2 weeks? And he's like, why? And I'm like, well, because, my best friend Dallas happens to also be moving to Georgia, and I don't know when I'll ever see him again. And I would just like to see him before he leaves. And he says, yeah, that's no worries. That's no worries whatsoever. And he said that he'll just do Uber in Miami, and that's how he'll make his money. And I said, all right, cool. So we go down, and on the way down, we're driving about all manner of things. And somehow, some way, I bring up that I am working for now my new stepfather, and I'm basically helping him. And he's like, my dad asked, like, oh, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, well, since I didn't have an actual job, I would help him with like anything he needed. Like, hey, scrape the tint off of this windshield, get like $50. Fucking help me out with some yard work, get, whatever amount of bucks, whatever. Like, just helping him out with basic shit, something to get me some extra money. And I really appreciated it. And so I was planning to, work that as much as I could, not full time, but as much as I could during the summer, because he said that he had plenty of like home tasks around his house that he needed help with. And I said, all right, bet. And so after that, my dad's demeanor kind of changed. And I noticed, I picked up on it immediately because he kind of seemed a little distant after that. Eventually, we ended up passing by Port St. Lucie, Florida. And when we ended up passing by Port St. Lucie, Florida, my dad, for the first time ever during this trip, had brought up that he was thinking that if in some shape or form that he couldn't do Uber down in Miami and make enough of a profit, that he was considering that on the second week of our vacation, so we're down there for 2 weeks, he said that at the end of the first week, he would go to Orlando and do Uber over there. And he would do Uber for about a week, and then he'd come and pick me up and take me back up. And, I thought nothing of it. I was like, all right, that's a little weird, but if anyone could do it, it's him. He has a Prius hybrid. That shit's got incredible mileage. If anyone could do it, it's him. So the first week goes by while we're at my grandma's, and everything, for the most part, is fine and dandy. And, there's not too many complications. There's my grandma being, like, annoying as she is, but there's not too much. There's not her trying to force me with food. There's not her trying to scratch me. There's nothing like that. Probably because she knew I would have put hands on her. But basically what ended up happening was that my dad ended up leaving early in the morning on that Sunday of the first week. He left bright and early. And he left so early, I didn't even get to say goodbye. He just left. And so I didn't think anything too much of it. And it wasn't until that same Sunday afternoon that I get a call from him. And the call is him telling me that he's made it to Orlando safe, that everything was cool, everything was kosher, everything was a chill trip. And I was like, all right, cool beans. And he's like, yeah, I'm gonna get started on Uber. And I said, all right, cool. So I start spending time with my grandma, and the next day, Monday, I get a call from him again, and he says that he's changed his mind and that he's not picking me up in a week. And I was like, wait, what do you mean? And he's like, oh, I'm just not gonna pick you up in a week. I just don't have the money right now. So I'm just going to, I'm just going to come down like when I have the money, and I should have the money. If I'm doing my calculations right, I should have the money in about a month. And I said, well, that's not going to work for me. I can't stay here for another month because I have to, Dallas before he leaves, and I have to go back and work for my stepdad. And he was like, oh, don't worry about it. Like, everything will be okay. He's like, it's not like it's a real job anyways. And he's like, and plus you could see friends at any time. You can always FaceTime them. And that pissed me off so bad. So I ended up hanging up. I just was like, all right, it is what it is. Maybe he's just busy in, Orlando, whatever. Maybe he really doesn't have money. And I call him back and I beg him, hey, please, can you just take me up? I have enough money. I have money. I told him I had I think $50 or $100. And I told him I will pay triple what the gas is. I'll pay you $60 just to get me home. That is more than you need. I will cover your gas. Please let me go home. And he said no. He turned it down. And so I just said, I told my stepfather what was going on with the situation. He was very understanding, very sweet, obviously. And he's like, we'll see what we could do when you're back. And I said, all right, cool. Obviously, it's not a real job, but, it was real to me. So it bothered me. Well, what ended up happening was my dad calls me back on Wednesday of that week. The way that I remembered that it was Wednesday was because he calls me and he says, hey, how you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm cool. And he's like, well, I just wanted to tell you that the Salvation Army is half off on Wednesdays. And I'm like, all right, cool. Why do I care? And he's like, well, because you told me that you have money. And I was thinking that, you could go to the Salvation Army, buy things half off on Wednesday, and, you could refurbish them and repurpose them and, resell them for a profit. Because that's something my dad was always obsessed with, was always buying to sell. That was something he always wanted to do. And that's how he always wanted to make money. He wanted to just be a vendor, essentially. And he said, you could, make money if you resell it. And I was like, cool, I guess, He's like, yeah, it is really cool. Honestly, you get to work your own hours, you get to make your own money, it really is cool. In my honest opinion, I think it's better than, doing slave work for your stepfather, but, that's just my opinion. So that was enough for me to realize that my father was petty enough to literally abandon me in, fucking Miami with my grandma stuck there for a month because he was so petty that I was working for my stepfather for money. So at this point, I hung up the phone and I said that, I'm not going to talk to him again. That pissed me off so bad I was not going to talk to him again. So at this point, I start trying to contact different relatives because no relative is really in Miami, but some are, within a couple hours. So I try messaging people, trying to see what I can figure out. And I try to just make the best of it for the next few days that I was with my grandma. And what ended up happening was that my grandma, what ended up happening with her was we were both in the living room. So I'm over here in this corner and she's over here in the center. And I'm playing on my own TV that I had brought because back then I was very keen on if I'm going somewhere, I'm going to bring a TV with me. And I'm going to play video games. So I brought my little, flat screen that was no bigger than this. I had my flat screen in the corner, so I'm over there in my little corner playing my PlayStation 3 or 4. And then my grandma's on her own big flat screen in the living room over there watching her TV. And we weren't even talking to each other. There was not even a single bit of us talking to each other, because she's watching America's Got Talent and I'm playing video games. We're both in the living room, but I have my stuff coming in through my headset, so I'm not hearing anything for the most part. After one of my games, I take off, my headset, and my grandma, just out of the blue, says, you guys didn't have to kill Princess, right? Keep in mind, this has been about 6 months after we had to put down my dog. And so she just says, you guys didn't have to kill Princess, right? And I'm like, I put on the mic, I'm like, hey guys, excuse me a sec, I have to cuss out a bitch. And so I muted my mic and I said, what the fuck are you talking about? And she basically said, like, oh, well, I'm sure she wasn't really sick. Like, I'm sure that your mother just really was just inflating that and really just wanted to kill the dog. Like, I'm sure that was just easier for her. I lost fucking shit because she was legitimately accusing us of just killing the dog. And she was like, you guys could have just asked for help. We would have helped you. And I was like, no, don't even fucking start. Because when we asked you for help, when I was sitting there begging you for help, you said no. You said this has nothing to do with you. And there is nothing that needs to be done. You did absolutely nothing. No, don't even start. Don't even dare talk about Princess like that. Don't even dare try to weaponize that against us. And I told her, shut the fuck up. Like, I started cussing out my grandma so fucking bad. I was crying through my tears. And after that, I was done. I was done. And so I contacted my oldest sister, who at the time lived about an hour and a half away from Miami. And I told her the situation. I told her what I was going through. And she said, hey, I've obviously had my run-ins with them. I've obviously had my fair share of situations with them. I'm going to get you out of there. And so after a couple of days of her figuring out, like, hey, can I get one of my, can she get one of her relatives to, help out too? And she was able to get help. And, they came when my grandma wasn't around. I got in the car and we left. And I was so happy, never talked to them again. Never talked to my grandma again. Obviously, over the years, they've tried to contact me. But, no, I've just never had interest. I've never had interest because if we really boil it down, we have my grandma who never apologizes, who was force feeding me food and might also be the reason as to why I have an eating disorder and I'm not able to eat most things, is probably because of her force feeding me and then teaching that to my fucking father, who never can think for himself, without his mommy dangling the keys in front of him because he's a fucking moron. No wonder he never went to college. Goddamn. So, there's with that with grandma. So she's, this, this person that just talks about everyone's business to everyone else. She always tells your life story to the most random people. She force feeds you food, scratches you up, mentally, emotionally abusive, hardcore manipulative. One of the most manipulative people I've ever met on the face of the planet. Jesus Christ. Just genuinely evil. And then you have my father over here, who is a sanctimonious prick who never can take any lick of criticism, can never take a single ounce of, he never could take a single second to just say, you know what, I fucked up, I did wrong. I have never seen this man say, I'm sorry, and actually mean it in my entire fucking life. This man is a cheapskate. This man is nothing of a father. He wonders why not a single one of his kids want to talk to him. He has 4 kids, 3 baby mamas, and he blames all the baby mamas for why the kids don't want to talk to him. Yet every single kid ended up in the mother's custody instead of his. That's very interesting. Now, sure, yeah, points he had custody for a limited time of these children, sure, for a little bit, but he's never had full custody. So this man's out here wondering, damn, it has to be all the women. No, it has to be you. And even if it was all the women, then that's also on you because you chose the women. I don't know what to tell you. You're a fucking moron. You're a fucking twat. I don't know what the fuck to tell you. Stupid dipshit. It's annoying. So then, not only that, right? Not only do you have all, right? My dad is a fucking moron. A genuine fucking moron. The only thing he's good for is cleaning your fucking carpets. That's the only thing this man is good for. Because you ever asked for any fucking child support to help out your kids with survival, basic survival? No, I'd rather get them a $1 toy, thank you very much. A father of the year, right here. No, he's a fucking scumbag. So he's a cheap screwed over his own kids for years in terms of the money that they could use for food or fucking uniforms. He is a legitimate pedophile and should be locked up, given the fact that he has dated multiple women that were underage and groomed them until they were of age. He dated them when they were underage and even said, you know, you need to dress older. He would make them dress older so that they wouldn't catch on to him. So he's a legitimate pedophile, a legitimate creep. Then, not only that, he is a liar. He uses the Bible to get out of every little nook and cranny argument under the fucking sun. Under the fucking sun. He can never be wrong because he's basically the second Jesus. See, that's basically what he is. Can't argue with Jesus. And, like, he can never admit that he's wrong. He hides all his money so that he uses it for himself instead of his kids. And then he wonders why none of his kids want to talk to him. Like, dude, and like, if your kids ever tell, like, if the kids, any of the kids have ever told him, hey, just so you know, your mom's crazy or you're doing something wrong, you know what he says? How dare you ever say something like that? You know you shouldn't be talking to your parents like that, blah, blah, blah. There's a reason as to why none of his kids talk to him. It's because that's how he talks to them. They bring up any good criticism, and it's, how dare you? How dare you even say that? It's like, dude, shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. This man has threatened me multiple times with my safety. He has threatened me multiple times with showing up to my school and causing a scene or like forcing me into his car so that I have to talk to him. I have those text messages still to this day. This man will be like saying shit like that and then wonder why I don't love him, why I don't give a fuck about him. Because here's the thing, for all the faults that my first stepfather had, and trust me, he had a lot. He had a lot of faults. He was not a rapist, and he wasn't a pedophile. And those are two things that my father, Osvaldo Antonio, is definitely a fucking rapist pedophile who probably should be in jail. Especially for all the evasion he does with all his money and taxes and shit. Oh yeah, that man should have been in jail a long time ago. And I'll put it as simply as this. This man has put me, my mother, and my youngest sister in a constant state of fear from like 2018 to 2023 because he would not get the hint that we wanted nothing to do with him. I will put it to you like this. If my father ever talks to me again or, you know, fucking tries to show up, especially if he tries to show up to me, my sister, or my mother. If he tries to show up to any of us, I'm going to the police with all the shit that I have on him. I really don't give a fuck. This man deserves to be under the jail. This man is the biggest creep that I know. He is a creep. He is disgusting. And the saddest thing is when I'm looking at this man who is incredibly all of these things, but he's also sexist. You know, he believes wholeheartedly like women should never have a fucking job. They should just be in charge of the fucking household. Like, that's literally him. So he's very old fashioned. Like, let me put it like this. I hope to God, and I know it sounds redundant, but I hope to God that hold up. I genuinely hope to God, and I know this is redundant, but I hope to fucking God that he does us all a favor and he just takes himself out at this point. Either that or he leaves us all the fuck alone. Because that's the only way that anyone will have peace from that very, 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 very evil creep. He is so evil. I want nothing to do with him. Oh my god. Hold up. Okay. Again, so the first one. So, like, I want absolutely nothing to do with this evil man. This evil man who is literally, he is absolutely the most evil person that I have ever met in my life. And I strive every day to be the most opposite of him, to be the polar opposite of everything he is. Because if I were to be everything he is, I'd want my friends to take me out. I would want someone to shoot me. Because I do not want any more people like my father or my grandma to ever exist. Those two people should honestly, at this point, they should just be in a relationship themselves. They're the only ones that can stand each other. Like, fuck, Alabama, that shit. Like, you're the only two that can stand each other. There's a reason why no one wants to date y'all. So they're gonna die alone with no one to love them, and that's the grave that they dug themselves. They deserve wholeheartedly. They deserve 150%. They deserve to die alone with no one at their graves, because I promise you, I will not go to my father's grave when he is dead because I do not give a fuck about him. I do not give a shit about him. My father has taught me through how he's treated me, how he's treated my mother, how he's treated my sisters. He has shown me that he is not a man that is worth loving. He is a man worth damnation. He is a man that deserves to rot at the very, very depths of hell. And I hope to God that he goes there, because if he's in heaven, then send me to hell. I want nothing to do with it. I want nothing to do with it at all. And like, it's just no. So I hope that either he leaves or he takes himself out at this point, bro, because that's the only way that shit's gonna get any better. He's a fucking scumbag. Like, I don't know. Like, a dad that can't even afford to give you basic stuff like food or groceries, but wants you to celebrate him like Jesus every time he gets you a $1 toy. I don't know. Doesn't sound like Father of the Year material to me. Oh, and before I go, one last thing. Apparently, there is also a fifth kid. He might also have a fifth kid. And so if you guys weren't catching up, so there's the oldest sister, the second oldest sister, me, and my youngest sister. Apparently there's a fifth kid. He just doesn't know the gender, the name, or where they live. He just knows, yeah, there was a woman I was with at one point. Pretty sure I got her pregnant. Never found the kid. Never found her. So, hey, if you're out there and your mom's got a similar story and somehow you may have my eyebrows, apparently we might also have the same scumbag father, so fist bump, bro, or gal, or etc. Like, Jesus. I really do pray every day for him to just get the absolute worst in life, because that's the only thing he deserves. So, yeah, that's my father and my grandma. So if you wonder why I have depression or anxiety or eating disorders, you can thank those lovely people for that. With that, I'm going to leave this video to close. And yeah, my dad and grandma, they showed me that family doesn't matter if it's blood related or not, because my roommate, that's family to me. That man right there in my house, that's family to me. He's like a brother to me. But my actual blood-related father and grandma, his mom, I'll be celebrating the dates that they're buried.